evening, and welcome to the July 10th, 2024 meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We have 6 meetings this evening: a Finance Committee meeting, a Parks and Recreation Committee meeting, a Grants and Community Development Committee meeting, a Building and Planning Committee meeting, a Legal Affairs Committee meeting, and a Special Board of Commissioners meeting. We'll start this evening with the Finance Committee. I recognize its chair, Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, President Sinai. We have 6 items on the agenda this evening. They are all awards for contract, and I believe our Assistant Township Manager will be fielding all of them. So we'll start with the first one. I'll go ahead and make motions for each, and then Brandon can give us some explanation. So I move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for South Ardmore Park playground improvements to Cousins, Inc. in accordance with bids received on Thursday, June 13th at 11 a.m. prevailing time, and the recommendation of the Interim Director of Finance with the approval of the Director of Public Works and the Township Engineer for a total bid amount of $216,000. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Brandon, over to you.
Absolutely. Good evening, Commissioners. This is one of the projects. It's a playground replacement in South Ardmore Park that was identified as the board as one of your American Rescue Act Plan, ARP, priorities. So this is staff, fulfilling a priority identified by the board and renovating and replacing and doing some improvements at the park. As you noted, the contract would be to Cousins, Inc., who was the low bidder in the amount of $216,000. We had $223,000 budgeted for this project, so we are about 3% under budget.
All right. Do we have any public comment in the room? How about on Zoom?
No one has their hand raised.
Thanks, Jody. All right. Are there any questions or comments from the members of the committee? All right. Well, let's take a vote. I don't know why Siri is talking to me right now. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Our next item is continuing with the playground theme. This is for the St. Paul's Tot Lot playground improvements. I move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for St. Paul's Tot Lot playground improvements also to Cousins, Inc., in accordance with bids received on June 13th at 11, and the recommendation of the Interim Director of Finance with the approval of the Director of Public Works and the Township Engineer for a total bid amount of $184,530. Thank you for the second, Commissioner Kramer. Brandon.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. Yet another playground replacement and improvement project identified by the board. It is going to be covered by ARP funds, American Rescue Plan, as well as Community Development Block Grant funds. So this was one of the projects identified in that program as well. The overall contract for this, as Commissioner Courtney identified, is $184,530. We had $200,000 budgeted, so we are about 11% under budget.
All right, 2 for 2. Any public comment on this one? Is there anyone on Zoom?
We have 2 people on Zoom.
But none of them want to comment?
No one has their hand.
All right, Commissioner Churchill.
Yes, have these folks done business with us before?
I do not believe that they have done any of the other playground improvements in the township before, but they have cleared all the prereqs that we would require, and once if the board awards a contract, we will hold them to the Lower Merion standard that we are all accustomed to.
The Lower Merion standard. I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Commissioner Churchill. Would anyone else have questions or comments? I moved her away. All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? I can't see Commissioner Stevenson, so I'm going to assume he's voting yes. It's unanimous.
I think he's turned off his camera.
Commissioner Stevenson, if you reject any of these, let us know. All right. Third tonight, no more playgrounds, is award of contract for Bliss Street River Road repair. All right, I move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for Bliss Street and River Road repair to Foresight Concepts in accordance with bids received on June 13th at 11. The recommendation of the interim director of finance with the approval of the director of public works and the township engineer for a total bid amount of $415,000. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. Brandon, please.
Commissioners, before you tonight is a recommendation to approve a contract for a road stabilization project on Bliss Street, also known as River Road in the far end of the township. This project is a result of heavy rains as well as a failure of the retaining wall on the significantly steep slope located on Bliss Street. So this contract would involve the contractor going down there, stabilizing the bank, putting new retaining walls and a guide rail. We have $400,000 budgeted for this project, so coming in at $415,000. We are over budget for this one. Sorry, couldn't make it a hat trick, which is roughly 4% over budget.
And is there any explanation as to why it came in over?
Mostly just because of the topography. It is an incredibly steep slope, so we actually have to work from the top of the slope instead of the bottom, because the road abuts the rail line. There's really no other option but to tackle the project from the top, and doing so makes it a little bit more complicated and unfortunately a little bit more pricey.
It is, as Commissioner Kramer just pointed out to me, the significantly cheaper bid than the other three that we got.
Yes.
Yes. All right, any public comment on this one or on Zoom? President Simon.
So I have a question, because I had to search for a bit to figure out where this was. A river road or Bliss Street that is in between the highway and the railroad is not the river road I usually think of, right? It's as far as I can tell, this can only, like if you want to drive a truck on to repair it, you got to drive through Conshohocken to get there.
You have to leave the township to get into the township on Bliss Street. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's this, I mean, can you, there seem to be like three businesses that like basically face onto the street in front of it, not on, like why do we need to spend money to repair this thing?
So
it looks
yeah, so
overgrown.
in order for us to vacate the road, which
Okay.
would mean like we say, this is not formally our responsibility. To your point, Commissioner, there's only three businesses that don't even front on the road. In order for us to basically say, this is, we don't have any future obligation for this, we need to make it come up to code. And in order to make it come up to the code, we have to stabilize the road in order to say, we have no future obligation for this street. So we have to put some money into it in order to say, no more money.
Got it. Okay, so it's music to my ears. So the point is that it will no longer be our road.
Yes.
Once
so,
we've done this.
Should the board award this contract and the work get done, the next step in this would be to vacate that road formally. So, once this project is done, I would be involved in it, and we would be here before you within the next couple months following that project to vacate that street.
Yeah, I suspect once that happens, it's going to return to nature.
It is a very narrow street, and it took me some time to find it as well. So.
Yeah. It's, you'll need like the bushwhacking thing to get through there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Courtney.
Thanks, President Simon. Your questions have given me a question of my own. Is there any reason why we would need to restore the road as opposed to just decommissioning it, maintaining ownership, and turning it back into a natural place?
Well, excellent question. In order for, the state to allow us to vacate it, because, even though it is a local road, essentially we would have to file paperwork with PennDOT saying we're not holding any responsibility. They want to ensure that we're leaving it in good condition, because when we vacate it, it becomes the responsibility of the property owners. So, that's a requirement that we have to meet in order to basically give it up.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we vacate it. Can we just turn it into a park?
Turning it into a park, we haven't thought about that. Again, it is very steep. In order to get to it, you have to leave the township to get to it. And, it's a tough spot, to ask people or to encourage people to access it would be, very difficult in order to even get there. So that, again, that's part of the cost, is getting to the site and the logistics of mobilizing to get to it.
It does seem a bit wasteful, $400,000 plus extra pavement for something that we assume is going to become dirt. What happens if we just don't do it?
Well, if we don't do it, there's a little bit of liability there, because technically it falls on us. And if anything happens, especially with the rail line being adjacent, should, heavy rains occur and, the right rock, come loose at the wrong time, there could potentially be some liability issues and risk.
And there are properties that access it. So we'd be leaving a hazardous situation in place for those adjacent properties.
Thank you. All right.
Commissioner.
Yes, Commissioner Russell.
And there's no connection with the railroad there, with the retaining walls that we're building?
In terms of, no, it won't be on railroad property. It's just adjacent to the railroad.
Yeah, I know, but there's no way they can share in that cost.
We haven't, really engaged the railroad for that because it's not on their property. It's, our responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else questions or comments on this one? All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right. I think I haven't counted how many we are. 12, is that 11 to 1?
I missed the opposed.
Oh, it's just me.
Commissioner Greenway.
Okay. Yes.
Are you okay with that going on consent? All right. Next up, I move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for library-wide voice over IP system upgrade to CM3 Building Solutions in accordance with bids received on Thursday, May 2nd at 11 a.m. and the recommendation of the interim director of finance with the approval of the director of libraries and the township engineer for a total bid amount of $92,129. Right.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. This is to replace the phone system in our libraries. We currently have an outdated system that is frankly no longer supported, an old analog system. And what this project would do is to replace it with modern voice over internet protocol, the VOIP phones that we find that are commonplace and supported throughout modern facilities. We do have this budgeted. Unfortunately, it is a little over budget. We budgeted $85,000 for this, and coming in at a little bit over $92,000, we are about 8% over budget. We do have the Director of Libraries, Lynn Williamson, here, if you have any specific questions regarding the phone system.
Any public comment on this one? Anyone on Zoom? Questions or comments from the board? All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I don't think I got a second.
We don't have I don't think we have a motion.
I read the motion,
Yeah.
but I didn't take a second.
I second.
Commissioner Bernheim seconds. All right, take two. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thanks to our township manager, former parliamentarian, right?
He just wants to call the library.
Okay, we have another contract for the library. I move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for library-wide camera system upgrade, again to CM3 Building Solutions in accordance with bids received on May 2nd at 11, and the recommendation of the interim director of finance with the approval of the director of libraries and the township engineer for a total bid amount of $128,799. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Churchill. Please.
So Commissioners, this contract is to install roughly 67 security cameras throughout our library system. We do have money budgeted, about $75,000. Unfortunately, coming in, well over that at $128,799. We're about 72% over budget. Again, Lynn Williamson, Director of Libraries here, regarding any of the questions you may have regarding the need for this security system.
Any public comment on this one? No. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Burnham.
If you're so kind to show up, would you educate us what you think we need and why we need it?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this. I know it's over budget, but the reason why I'm recommending, or the staff is bringing this recommendation forward, is that we have been in the renovated libraries now for over 10 years. The security system was installed 10 years ago with some assumptions about traffic patterns and public usage. And we've seen over 10 years some documented security incidents and also volume in different places that aren't covered by the security camera system. So when replacing the whole system to be a modern system, the current system is very pixelated and almost impossible to use for its purpose. The additional amount comes from additional cameras, 15 additional cameras that we have, that we would like to have, that we don't currently have, covering blind corners and high traffic areas.
If I may. My recollection of the time that we were doing the libraries and looking at the budgets, one of the line items was the disappearance of books and materials. And year after year, that was, fairly constant, whether it went up or down, but it was, roughly the same, but it was always there. And it was my understanding that that was more people check the books out and we just never see them again, as opposed to maybe people, taking things, walking out and not checking them out. It may be a combination thereof. Is the concept with these cameras is like, we may find people as they're, stuffing, books in their book bag or something of that nature? And if so, my other concern is if we see somebody doing that, what are we going to do about it? Not that I endorse what I'm about to reference, but I know that there are many retail places, if they see theft, the instruction to their personnel is do nothing because the potential consequences of some other worse bad act they seek to avoid. So throwing all of that out, tell me what are we hoping to accomplish with this, and tell me why you think it may even just increase safety, if not just the loss of books.
Actually, the number one priority for the security cameras isn't the control of library materials. It's more to have access to recording of behavior, of patron behavior in the library. So it's not an inventory control measure. We have had some incidents of people acting out, sometimes around the public computers in ways that challenge the safety of staff and other members of the public. We've had some mental health consumers who have acted erratically, and it is important to be able to use security tape footage to be able to identify individuals who are not acting within our patron responsibility policy.
Okay. So it would be fair to say that you would consider this more of a safety element than loss?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate the explanation.
Commissioner Bernheim, I received an email from Commissioner Zeloff sort of referencing this particular issue that I'll forward to everyone on the board. Our Director of Libraries was kind enough to outline some of the incidents that have occurred that these cameras are intended to prevent. It's quite disappointing to see that this is going on in our libraries, so I think this is a good use of funds. Commissioner Gabbard.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Has this been coordinated with the police? Like, have you worked with them on where to place the cameras, how to do, what we need?
We have not coordinated directly with the Lower Merion Police Department. We have used our own recording of past incidences, as well as our analysis with the township engineer of blind corners.
Okay.
However, we do have a security camera policy. The Lower Merion Library System has a security camera policy that was actually enacted the day after I started in my role with the township, and the police department did have the opportunity to review and make suggestions to that policy at that time.
Okay. What is that policy? Generally, I'm not asking you for each line.
Yeah, it just, it outlines how and why we have a security camera system, what its purpose is and what its purpose is not, and outlines how to uphold patron privacy, and also falling in under Pennsylvania statute for certain privacy protections, requiring that a court order or subpoena is required in order to share any security tape footage with anyone outside of the township.
Gotcha. This is well beyond my expertise, so I don't know what I'm talking about as usual. But would it make sense to coordinate with the police, like to have them review kind of where the cameras are going, what's going on, or would they add any value to this, or?
With all due respect, I think we know our buildings better than the police do, so I trust my staff to make recommendations and to draw on the incident reports that we have.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, let's have a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that one carries, anyone opposed? That one carries unanimously as well. And we are on to our final item for the Finance Committee this evening. I move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a professional services contract with Accurate Construction Management to serve as the owner's representative of the Ardmore Avenue Community Center, Palm Senior Center Replacement and Renovation Project, and the Ashbridge House Renovation and Addition Project, as recommended by staff, for a total bid amount of $589,000. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Crane. All right, Brandon.
All right. Last one for the
Take us
committee tonight. So before you is a contract for your consideration to award a professional services contract with Accurate Construction Management to serve as owner's representative for both the Palm/Ardmore Community Center project as well as the Ashbridge House project. As the board is aware, this board, the township is investing a significant amount of American Rescue Act funds, grant funds, and township dollars towards these projects. They're going to be very large, very involved. We had a marathon session just the other day just to go over, the nuances of where, stalls should be located and light fixtures and all that fun stuff. What the owner's representative would do if this contract is awarded is that they would be the prime lead in coordinating the effort of not only the architect, but also township staff and the primes once the projects are awarded. So what many people aren't aware of is with such large projects, state law requires multiple primes, meaning multiple contractors all working on a singular project. And for anyone who has ever involved themselves in such a project, it could be very time consuming. So township staff, believe that having an owner's representative to coordinate all actors, all parties involved for both of these projects is not only something that would be beneficial for the township in terms of cost efficiency and time efficiency, but would overall lead to better capable of having a project that maintains on budget, within time, and is as efficiently conducted as possible. And I will note that this construction management firm was contracted with the township before. Prior to my arrival here in the township did spend quite a bit of investment in our library system. which was originally conducted without an owner's rep, and about midway through the project, due to various of circumstances, project delays and what have you, an owner's rep was obtained for that project. And the owner's representative for that library renovation project was Accurate Construction Management. And, having talked with staff, their performance during the later end of that project when they came on board as owner's rep was, nothing but positive in terms of being able to herd the cats, so to speak, in terms of the contractors working on the various projects, as well as all the different projects that were being undertaken relatively within a short period of time, right after another.
That's great to hear. Is there any public comment on this one? Nothing on Zoom either. Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Burnham.
Yeah, thank you very much. There were some comments that we did receive from other people who were questioning this. I'm glad Commissioner Churchill just walked back in the room, so I wouldn't be the only one here who will remember Ludington Library when we did not have an owner's rep. And the hindsight being 20/20, if we were to pay a cost similar to this, to what we would have then saved for some of the problems we had there, we would have done it then in a heartbeat. So while this may have a sticker shock to those who don't live in the construction world, including myself, it will be, money well spent and probably end up saving us, and certainly saving staff a considerable amount of time. So I hope everybody supports this.
And if I may add on to that, Commissioner Bernheim, we did solicit multiple proposals from different contract companies, and we did get two responses, one being Accurate Construction, and we did get a second proposal, which was well in excess of double the cost of the price that you see before you. So we are confident that, although, as you mentioned, it is a little bit of a sticker shock for those who, aren't involved in multi-million-dollar projects, the $589,000 price tag, represents about 2 to 3% of the overall cost of both projects. So, just to put it in comparison, and also just to, let the board know that if this contract is awarded, once this owner's rep is, online, so to speak, we have cleared out space in the township building, so they will be located here. They won't be, off-site, where we have to, catch them and get in contact. We'll be able to go down the stairs and talk to them as they're working on the project on a daily basis.
That's great to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else on the board like to questions or comments on this? All right. I'd just like to add my support for this as well. What we learned in our capital improvement workshop last week is that we have a lot of money and not enough staff. And so I think this is a great use of funds to help out our overly taxed staff with our very ambitious capital improvement projects, and particularly the two noted here are somewhat transformative for our township, and I think at a 2% price tag, we're getting a pretty good deal. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? There's a late raise from Commissioner Stevenson. All right. That one carries unanimously. And that ends the business of the Finance Committee tonight, President.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Courtney. Our next committee is the Parks and Recreation Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
Thank you. There's one item on the agenda tonight, which is a resolution to authorize a grant application for Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Grant to partially fund trail improvements along Writers Ferry Road. I move that the Parks and Recreation Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of a resolution authorizing submission of a grant application in the amount of $250,000 to the PADCED for a Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Grant to partially fund trail improvements along Writers Ferry Road, including authorization of matching funds of 15% of the grant amount in the amount of $37,500. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Is there any public comment on this item? Mr. Doyle is available to answer any questions or to respond to any comments from members of this committee. Are there any comments?
What's the timeline for the application of the grant? When will we know if it's accepted, and then if it is, how long is it going to take for this to be real?
Mr. Doyle, do you know the timeline?
I do. I just spoke with I've had email conversation. We're supposed to find out at the end of September.
I would just like to add my comment, which is that I went on the tour with Mr. Lesswing of this area, and this is a very unsafe approach for pedestrians and would, I think, is a very needed improvement to the trail network. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay. In that case, I'd like to have a vote on this. All in favor? Raise your hand, please. Thank you. And nobody's opposed, so this is passes unanimously as well. Thank you, and that's the concludes the business of the Parks and Recreation Committee.
And thank you, Commissioner Kramer. The next committee meeting for this evening is the Grants and Community Development Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Epstein.
Thank you. We have 4 items on the agenda this evening. So first, I would like to make a motion to recommend the Board of Commissioners adoption of a resolution to adopt the annual action plan for year 50 in the amount of $1,011,161 and the filing of the Fund Year 50 CDBG application, including all assurance and certifications therein. Do I have a second? Better than I can, yes.
Is this amount, is this more or less than we spent last year? Or apply?
Oh, for the previous plan?
Yeah.
Emily wanted-
Commissioner, our allocation is slightly increased this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? Okay. All those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to add $19,292 to the staff-approved expense of $75,000 for a total of $94,292 to bring a property in Ardmore to minimum standards pursuant to CDBG regulations. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. And Emily, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little explanation on this one. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you for making such quick work of my first agenda item. I have 3 more for you that are all quite similar. Thank you. Yeah, so this first one is a single-family residence in Ardmore that requires extensive lead removal, new electric service, removal of all knob and tube wiring, which is deteriorating, complete rewiring of the house, new hot water heater, kitchen renovations, and relocation of the family of 6 for the duration of the lead remediation and the rewiring. As you know, I recently asked you to raise the spending limit to $75,000, so apologies for being here 3 times tonight to go over it. But that is the extent of this project. It's already underway. Some of this was added on during demolition, most especially the wiring, which pushed it over the limit. So I did include a contingency in here, so hopefully we won't have to come back. And that is the first agenda item, if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Any public comment on this one? Question? Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Commissioner Churchill.
Where is this family being relocated, and for how long?
They were relocated, well, we did the lead remediation to a hotel for about a week. During some of the lead remediation, that's when we discovered the bad wiring in the house.
Yeah.
So they were planning to live there while the other stuff was done. We were going to have to move them back out again. I'm currently negotiating a lease with a landlord for a month-long. We probably only need it for about 2.5 weeks, but it's hard to find that, and it's a lot cheaper than putting them back in the hotel.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move this to a vote. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, third item, similarly, motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to add $29,665 to the staff-approved expense of $75,000 for a total of $104,665 to bring a property in Ardmore to minimum standards pursuant to CDBG regulations. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Woodring. Emily, if you want to give us a slowdown on this one.
Sure, similar request, different house. It's another house in Ardmore that also required even more extensive lead removal and relocation of the family, a new roof, only minor interior renovations, but a complete rebuild of the front porch, which this is another project that's already under construction and was significantly increased when we demoed the front porch and discovered the foundations are in complete disrepair, no footings, no slab, some damage to the, it's a twin, so we're repairing a little bit of the attached house. Does that make sense? So there's also a contingency in here, and it's well underway. Much of the work has been done, so again, hopefully this one will not come back to you again.
Any public comments on this one? Oh, okay, yes, Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you. This is for a total of 3 houses. Usually, we're only able to do like 1 a year, is that right?
So these are both, the first 2 are both part of the residential rehab program, and we shoot to do between 8 or 10 of those each year.
Okay.
And I promise you, some of them are under the limit. The third one is the home purchase program, but the first 2 are just rehab
Okay.
projects.
The first 2, do we hold a lien on these properties?
Yes, so we don't lien any of the lead work. Anything we do that's lead or asbestos related, and the removal and the relocation of people during that is a direct grant, so we do not lien that.
Okay.
After that, we lien the first $25,000 as a declining balance lien or loan, and that goes away after 5 years. Anything above that $25,000 is in the form of a permanent lien against the house, which can stay there until the house is vacated.
You're saying 5 years. I thought it was 10 years.
The declining balance lien is 5 years, and
Okay.
then the permanent lien is forever.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, bring this one to a vote. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. All those opposed? That passes unanimously. And our last one, it's going to feel a little familiar. It's very similar. Motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to add $41,598 to the previously approved expense of $137,290 for a total of $178,888, $178,888, including contingency of $5,000 to bring this home in Ardmore to minimum standards pursuant to CDBG regulations. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. Emily.
Okay. So this is the most significant one, and this one I actually did bring to you before, and I brought it to you while we were in the midst of bidding. I had a preliminary bid, but we didn't have final bidding, so the final bidding was a bit higher than I thought. And in addition to that, we discovered a significant amount of structural issues when we were doing demolition and a little bit of extra lead work. This also includes a contingency. It's also under construction. This one is part of the home purchase program. So for this one, we bought the house and we're fixing it up. With all the funding that's going into it, when it gets sold, the first-time home buyers who buy the house will almost always have about $150,000 mortgage, so we will get that $150,000 back, which will leave us, I'm just saying this because I think somebody will ask, that will leave us having spent about $250,000 on the house, half of which will stay in the form of a permanent lien against the house, also to be returned if the house is ever sold. So far, we haven't had a home purchase house resold, but maybe someday.
Any public comment on this item? Anyone see?
I hate to be a broken record.
Just making sure there's no one in the room. Okay, now, anyone on the committee?
What's the total number of homes that we have under this program? It was 13, wasn't it?
Total that have been, I think it's either 13 or 14 right now. I
Okay,
have to
so
look
this-
back. We actually own a couple of them right now that we're working on right now, that we bought kind of quickly in a row. So
Okay.
pretty soon the number will be higher, but I think it's 13 or 14 that have been bought and sold.
Okay. If Commissioner Zoloff was here, I would hope that he would join with me and just say, I think this is just a really great program, that it's a way of keeping neighbors in the neighborhood, and when and if the homes are sold, the money comes back to us, that we can provide the service to others. So thank you.
Thank you. I echo that sentiment. It's great programs. Okay, any other comments, questions? All right, we'll call the vote on this last one. All those in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much, and that concludes the business of Grants Community Development. Thank you very much, Emily. Commissioner Sinai.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Epstein. So our next committee this evening is the Building and Planning Committee, and I recognize its Vice Chair, Commissioner Whalen.
Thank you very much, President Sinai. We have tonight 4 items. We are actually going to start with item number 2, which is the conditional use application for 1130 Vaughans Lane. This is Beth David Reformed Congregation in Ward 2. If I could call on Charlie Doyle, give us a little context of what we're discussing tonight.
Sure thing. Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. So we are dealing with 1130 Vaughans Lane, a conditional use application to expand the use of the property, as well as expand the student attendance for preschool by 90 students, as well as cap that based upon some of the zoning hearing board decisions that were made prior to this to the conditional use hearing. The process went with our Planning Commission, seeing the application at the beginning of December 5th. Following that, there were 5 different conditional use hearing application meetings. That ended in April, where we had recommendations by our conditional use hearing officer for 10 different changes to recommendations, but the ultimate approval. Those recommendations were provided to you in the packet there, and so we are recommending the approval of the conditional use application.
Thank you very much. And I assume there might be some people on this dais who have some questions for you, so I'll just ask you to stay there if you could.
Sure thing.
So before I start, Mr. Hovey, I just want to confirm with you our process here tonight. The public conditional use hearing has already taken place, and we have before us tonight the conditional use findings from our conditional use officer. So our role tonight is simply only with respect to the record that has already been made and closed in the conditional use hearing to determine if we, the board, approve or deny that conditional use. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner Whalen.
So I am going to go ahead and take public comment tonight, but I will, in consultation with Mr. Hovey, make it clear for this board, we are not, as a board, able to take into account anything that we hear tonight. We are only allowed to decide based upon the conditional use opinion that we already have in our packets and that was available to the public. So, thank you very much. Any public comment on this matter? All right. Seeing none. Any commissioner comment or questions? Go ahead.
This is a wonderful and inclusive religious organization. Beth David was formed 75 years ago in Winfield. It moved to Gladwyne 45 years ago. He's been a respected, good community neighbor. When I say inclusive, we had a number of ministries stand up and talk about how inclusive they've been with the neighboring ministries, all different sizes, shapes, and forms of religious organizations. Religious institutions make our community a better place. Membership in religious organizations are on the decrease. Beth David, like so many places of worship, needs to increase their membership. And this is a vision they've formed. A vision that would be bright for the future of Beth David and perhaps for other institutions that institute the same type of agreement. A preschool would be excellent for building membership and developing a revenue stream for this institution. Beth David would continue as a valuable member of the community and would be a safe and secure place for working families to place their children during the day. Everyone in our township agrees we need more preschool programs. Ms. Lockman's discussion says it all. I personally have been a member of Beth David for 35 years. I have no financial interest. I have never served on any of the boards of the synagogue. The proposed school is necessary for Beth David's financial stability and for its future, and I heartily support this. Thank you, Commissioner Kevin.
Thank you very much. Just clearing up a little procedural matter.
But I was looking at you and, yeah, you know, I'm cross-eyed.
You were just hoping it was going to be somebody else, I know.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Bernheim, did you have your hand up also?
Yeah, I did. Thank you very much, Commissioner Whalen. And I'm sure we stated, or you referenced it, we can certainly listen to what people say, but we just can't take new evidence. There's a difference there. And that I also would like to echo what I think I'm hearing, and that's appreciation for our conditional use officer, Pam Laughlin, and her typical, very comprehensive reports and findings, and it's whether we adopt those or not this evening. And one thing I just want to make sure is I understood there's to be a turning lane southbound on Conshohocken State Road. Is that part of this, this approval?
There may be improvements that would be associated with the entrance to the ingress and egress to the property, correct?
Yeah, I mean, because there's reference in our memo, the applicant shall agree to install 75-foot left turn lane on the southbound Conshohocken State Road. But I don't see that as, unless I've missed it, and there's a lot of paperwork here, that's something that's already part and parcel of this approval.
That is not, it's not a recommended requirement of the condition. The left turning lane is not. It's simply stated within the decision as a recommendation for the township to consider.
Okay, so help me out, and I apologize if I'm slow on the pickup here. Where it states now that the applicant shall agree to install it, we don't have that agreement in place, because that's the real issue that some of the people who have a question about it, all the comments made by Commissioner Rossman are spot on as to about the community in this particular place, but the concern is the additional traffic, and there's already traffic there, as we all well know. So I'm just trying to find out where we stand now and maybe in the future about that left-hand turn lane.
So my understanding is the level of service there does not warrant improvements beyond what is already there. The applicant actually has their traffic engineer here who can speak further about that.
Okay.
Before we proceed with that, though, again, just to be cautious again, to make sure that the Board of Commissioners understands, this is you're acting on behalf of administrative proceeding, which is already closed. So the record has been set. I would not ask too many questions of the traffic engineer, if any, and rely on the testimony that was presented. To Commissioner Bernheim's point, I believe the hearing officer only recommended that the applicant cooperate with addressing the feasibility of expanding and creating that lane.
You are correct. Our township manager was kind enough to point out to me in the order, letter I states just that, which I missed it. So I appreciate it. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you, Commissioner Whalen.
Is that everything, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. And I just wanted to say something. So this board hearing these conditional use applications, it's new for us, right? They used to be done by special exception. Fortunately, we have Solicitor Hubby here to help. But we're also you're figuring this out, right? And want to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And let me address something. And I very much appreciate Commissioner Rossman's comments. I think we have a lot of valuable institutions in this township. Tonight, we are not deciding whether an institution is valuable or not. We have many, many valuable institutions who might want to do something that is not allowed by the zoning code. We have institutions who we might think are not valuable who want to do something that is allowed, right? And here we are just simply deciding whether what the request is allowed or not. And I think, our conditional use hearing officer did really an exemplary job in her assessment here, in her decision. But let me just quote from it. She writes, Beth David has satisfied its burden of proving compliance with the specific criteria applicable to the proposed expansion, right? That's what a conditional use requires. You have to meet the conditions that allow you to do the use. And she has written that Beth David has satisfied that, right? That is what we're evaluating here. The second, she writes, is the next issue is whether granting conditional use approval for preschool will adversely affect the public welfare due to safety conditions arising from increased use of Vaughans Lane during the morning after rush hours, which she goes on to conclude would not happen, right? So then she addresses sort of the second prong of conditional use, which is the health, safety, and welfare. Right? Nothing in this is whether such a decision is needed for the future well-being of an institution. Right? If we were deciding on policy, we'd be able to take that into account. Here, we're just interpreting our zoning code, and that is a very different thing. If what we wanted to do as a board was make it so our institutions were able to thrive and like our institutions needed something like third-party uses, and we would change our ordinances to make sure that would be allowed, and that would be a policy decision that we could therefore do that with. But here tonight, we are just deciding on the application of the code. So I am going to be in favor of this conditional use because I'm convinced by Pam Loffman's brief, but it is basically because I'm being convinced on the facts here, in not any assessment of any institution one way or another. Thank you, Commissioner Whalen.
Thank you very much, President Simon. Any other commissioners? Seeing none, and still no one online. Jody?
No one has their hand raised.
All right. I certainly agree, understand, and further all of the comments by all three of the commissioners that have said this tonight. I agree we're not making value judgments. However, I do very much respect our institutions, both religious and secular, in this arena and township, and we would very much like to abide by the conditional use. And I appreciate President Sinai quoting directly from that, as I was actually intending to do so. So with that, I will actually take off my glasses to read now.
Commissioner Whalen, I would just like to thank Commissioner Sinai for redirecting our focus. Thank you. Very well said. Thank you.
Certainly. All right. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a conditional use application. The applicant seeks conditional use approval to modify conditions imposed by the Zoning Hearing Board pursuant to Zoning Code Section 155-4.4C6 by modifying the Zoning Hearing Board conditions of January 24th, 1984, June 26th, 2008, December 8th, 2008, and January 9th, 2009, respectively, to expand its existing use and add a preschool to the existing educational facilities, making the property available for, first, preschool services up to 90 students occurring Monday through Friday, student drop-offs and pickups limited to the hours of 7:30 to 9 a.m., 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., and 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., with a total enrollment for all educational uses to to not exceed the 280 student limit. Now, however, as I read that, we have certain amendments to the conditions and an addition of 2 new conditions that, as I understand it, and I look to Joey, they are agreeable with the applicant and they've accepted all of these conditions, correct?
We did speak with the applicant's attorney for the amendments to the conditions.
Okay. I'm going to continue to go through them for the board, and again, it's just my understanding, and we'll get confirmation that these are all acceptable. All right, so first we're going to add a new condition A stating total enrollment in educational programs at any one time is capped as follows. A, 280 students for Sunday school. B, 240 students for Tuesday classes, which were previously held on Thursdays. And C, 90 students for preschool classes. At no time shall the number of students on site on the property exceed these totals. Now, I understand at various points in time we go one by one on amendments to see if the board agrees with all of them. As I understand, all of these are agreeable, so I will just go through them all at once, and if anyone wants to pull one out, we can after the fact. Secondly, we're going to add a new condition B that states student drop-offs and pickups for the preschool classes shall be limited to the hours of 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then we're going to amend condition C to read a maximum of 23 staff members are permitted on site at any one time between the hours of 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Mondays through Fridays. We are going to delete in their entirety the existing conditions B and C, and we are going to amend condition D ever so slightly. It states, the applicant shall notify the Director of Building and Planning and the Township Engineer whenever enrollment in the preschool increases by 20 students over the first year's enrollment numbers, and any subsequent increase of an additional 20 students. The Director of Building and Planning and the Township Engineer have discretion to require the applicant to submit, and this will now say updated instead of current, so we're just changing one word, updated traffic studies of Vaughn Lane and the intersection with Conshohocken State Road to facilitate traffic movements, levels of service, parking, loading, queuing, and all other matters related to transportation, parking, loading, queuing, and safety for preschool students and staff. Let's see where I'm at now. I most certainly will not repeat anything that I'm saying right now. All right, and then if we go to condition G, we are going to revise that to now read, the applicant shall provide, to the satisfaction of the Director of Building and Planning, a 20-foot buffer of deciduous and evergreen trees and shrubs along all property lines adjacent to residential uses, including 1110 Vaughn Lane, if one does not already exist. Do I have a second? Thank you, Vice President Kramer. So I will now ask, just state your name and...
Absolutely. My name's Dan Rowley. I'm with the law firm Saul Ewing. I'm here tonight representing the applicant, Beth David.
Thank you very much. And did you hear everything I said? And I assume you had it in writing because
I did not have it in writing, but me and Charlie did talk briefly before. That was the first time seeing it in writing. I do just have one small clarification, but I think they're substantially similar to what was in Ms. Lockman's decision.
Go ahead.
If we could bring it, thank you. So I am looking at C. So it says, as it's written here or has been revised, a maximum of 23 staff members is permitted on site. I would just suggest, and this is reflective of our traffic study and our testimony at the hearing, a maximum of 23 preschool staff members. And that would be our only clarification.
All right. And just for the board's understanding, what's the differentiation there that you're you're making, what are the other staff members or who else is already on?
There is some administrative staff and, staff members of Beth David who may be on the property during preschool hours as well. The 23 is additional preschool staff that is being proposed as part of our expanded use.
Right, and that was presented in the conditional use hearing, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Ironically, if I made it, I would consider it a friendly amendment, but I will reread the newly amended condition C to read as a maximum of 23 preschool staff members are permitted on site at any one time between the hours of 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Mondays through Fridays. Commissioner Kramer, do you still? Thank you. All right. Do we have any public comment? I think I already went through once, but seeing none, I will call it for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. And everyone is in favor, so anyone who wants to change their vote to no, raise your hand. Seeing none, no abstentions, it passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. There should be significantly less reading from the the next set. All right, we're going to go back to number 1 on the authorization, the agenda rather, authorization to release funds held in escrow, and I jinxed myself. There is not less reading. I apologize to the crowd. I will move for the recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval to release funds held in escrow as improvement guarantees in accordance with Section 135-7 of the Township Code for the following: 920 Youngsford Road, LOWM 248.63, Gladwyne Montessori School, escrow release number 5, the final escrow release, amount $32,791. Emphasis is supposed to be put on at the end. Thank you. Number 2, 101 North Marion Avenue, LOWM 254.55, Bryn Mawr College Wellness Center, escrow release number 4 in the amount of $13,000. 1064 and 1080 Mount Pleasant Road, LOWM 256.31, escrow release number 8 in the amount of $257,505. 27 West City Ave, LOWM 260.05, AutoZone, escrow release number 3 in the amount of $21,316.50. 529 Clothier Road, LOWM 256.41, escrow release number 3, the final one, in the amount of $22,155. And finally, 523 Clothier Road, LOWM 256.41, escrow release number 3, the final one, in the amount of $21,770. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Gavin. Now, before I proceed, do any commissioners want to remove one of these for special consideration? Seeing no hands, I will ask, is there any public comment with regard to this matter? Seeing none, any commissioner comment on this? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Seeing none, no abstentions. Jody, that passes unanimously. I now see, after going through these first two, why Commissioner Zoloff chose not to be here tonight. We're now on to agenda item number 3, the approval of certificates of appropriateness. And I'm going to move for the recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following certificates of appropriateness as recommended by the Historical Architectural Review Board at their meeting held on July 2nd, 2024. First, 56 East Lancaster Avenue, Ardmore, Commercial Historic District 24-14, approval to replace third floor windows with a configuration matching the original 1920s architecture, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard Number 9. And second, 527 Old Lancaster Road, Haverford Station Historic District, 24-13, approval to construct the foundation of an addition to contain garage and living area with other elements including material and massing details tabled. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Woodring. Now again, any commissioners who wish to address either of these individually? Seeing none, is there any public comment on either of these matters? Seeing none, nothing online?
Nope.
All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. All right, any opposed? Seeing none and no abstentions, Jody, that passes unanimously. And the final item for tonight, this is killing me. I don't know if anyone's looked at the final agenda item, but you should all go take your breaks now because I'm going to be at this for about 5 minutes. All right, final agenda item. Approval of Historical Commission applications. I'm going to move for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. Approval of the following applications as recommended by the Historic Commission at their meeting held on June 24th, 2024. A, 1301 West Montgomery Avenue, Bryn Mawr, Ashbridge House, Class 1, 2024, R-10. Approval to demolish a late 19th century addition to the 18th century residence and construct a larger rear addition to accommodate a new senior youth center use, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10, with a subcommittee to review final drawings with further window details and a preference for the regularized corner windows on the rear and side elevations as depicted in the renderings. Number B, 1533 Monk Road, Gladwyne, Class 1, 2024, N-11. Approval to amend a previous approval to construct a new residence on Lot 1 of the former Linden Hill Estate, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. C, 800 Yarrow Street, Bryn Mawr, Shipley School, Class 2, 2024, R-12. Approval to replace trim elements of third floor dormers with composite materials with molding profiles and dimensions to be in kind, with a subcommittee to review a mock-up created by the applicant for further review and approval, and to coordinate any secondary railing required by Township Code to safeguard work on the roof. D, 83 West Levering Mill Road, Bala, Cynwyd, Class 2, 2024, R-13. Approval to make modifications to a garage at the rear of the property, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 9. E, 32 East Old Gulf Road, Wynwood, Class 1, 2024, R-14. Approval to make various modifications and additions to a historic residence, with a subcommittee to review details of and revisions to design elements including the garage dormer, fenestration, eave line, rear cross gable, with additional consideration given to the alteration of windows to doors in the current proposed design, citing Secretary of the Interior's Standards 9 and 10. F, 1520 Spring Mill Road, Gladwyne, Class 2, 2024, R-15. Approval to construct a rear addition and a portico over the front entrance and to replace shutters on the historic section of the residence, with additional window details to be submitted for staff review, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. And finally, G, 10 Monument Road, Bala, Cynwyd, WCAU Building, Class 2, 2024, R-16, a 90-day delay of the issuance of the building permit to install window openings on 2 sides of the building's brick facade. With that, are there any commissioners who... You want second, Commissioner Gavin? Are there any commissioners who wish to remove one of those items for special consideration? Start with President Tisana.
I'd like to remove the last one. Are you going to remove?
Same.
All right.
Yes. I don't necessarily want to remove one. I want to make an amendment to A, hopefully a friendly amendment. I think it's a relatively minor one. I don't know if you want, how you want to handle it.
Go ahead and you can read it this time.
Okay, so for A, which is
friendly amendment.
Yes, which is Ashbridge House. There's language to approval to demolish the late 19th century addition to the 18th century current residence and construct a large rear addition. And then there's a clause that says to accommodate a new senior center use. While we have an MOU with, for a senior center use, and that's the intention, this needs to get done whether we end up doing that or not. So I would like to remove the to accommodate a new senior center use. Just strike that language and just say approval to demolish a late 19th century addition to the 18th century residence and construct a large rear addition, citing Secretary of the Interior's standards 10, et cetera.
All right. I will consider that a friendly amendment. I assume you would also consider, you seconded it, so we're still moving ahead. Jody, can I go ahead and call the vote on those first items first and then take G separately?
Yep.
All right. So is there any public comment with regard to items A through F as amended for item A? Seeing none. Any commissioner comment for any of those items? Seeing none. All those in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Seeing none. And no abstentions. Jody, that passes unanimously. And now we will separately address 10 Monument Road and its removal. So take it away.
Okay, I will give a brief summary of this application. And if you thought that took long, you should have been at the HC meeting. May have been a record, but we got through a lot of things, and we did end with this 10 Monument Road project. I'll attempt to share my screen. Here we are. Okay, this building, this property has been before you multiple times over the last year or two for various modifications proposed by its new owner. The current application is to modify the two of the brick facades, one of them facing City Avenue, one of them facing side parking lot. These modifications would essentially add a total of 8 new window openings within these now solid brick facades. 5 would be facing City Avenue and 3 would be on the other side. The Historical Commission had some concerns about this plan, mainly because the design of the building would be altered significantly with these new penetrations. They also pointed out that the design language of the building is horizontal in nature. These window openings would be vertical, and they discussed various other options for lighting the interior space with the applicant, things like skylights, a clear story or monitor on the roof that would allow light to come in, solar tubes, which are like skylights, but they travel a greater distance within the building. And the applicant was set on using this design as proposed. So the commission did provide an additional comment stating that they continued to encourage the applicant to work within the historic character, material and color palette, and forms of the original historic architecture. They made such recommendations, which were rejected outright by the applicant, and therefore voted to delay the approval of the application. And I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
All right. Are there any public comment? Go ahead.
You want to use that for me? Sure.
While you're walking, just please identify yourself and where you live in the township.
Sure. My name is Cynwyd. I'm an architect and a representative for the applicant. So here just to speak somewhat on their behalf as far as the approach and answer any questions that may be had in regards to their decisions. The driving force for the windows was to basically allow for additional space for the Susquehanna International Group, which they have outgrown their 401 building. And so this building was purchased to, one, house fitness amenities that they were moving out of the 401 building, and over the past few years have actually continue to grow so to the point where they need to take over space within this 10 Monument Road building. The portion of the building we are looking to inhabit with office space is going to be infilled with 2 stories. So there will be 2 layers or levels of office space where currently it's just a 2-story open area. And so the hope is to provide natural light for the people working in those spaces. So the application itself went through, was presented with those window conditions. We would also just like to say that we submitted for building permits in mid-May, and so have been delayed through this process since that point, and would like that to be considered as part of the review of the application and any delays that would be posted against the project.
Thank you very much. Jody, is there anyone online? Their hand raised?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Seeing no further public comment, I will go to commissioner comments. Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. I'm not an architectural expert, so I trust the Historic Commission when they're in that regard. But my questions tonight are more around the purpose of our Class 2 historic designation and what the ordinance allows us to do. So just to make sure I understand it correctly, that ordinance does not allow us to prevent modifications or to stop any sort of construction. Is that correct?
It is correct.
And is 90 days the maximum penalty?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And as it's been explained, at least my understanding of it, the purpose of the 90 days is to give more time for collaboration, to come up with alternative ideas, potentially in an instance of demolition that someone will come in and buy the property. It's not meant to be punitive. Is that correct?
Generally, the period does allow for time for things like documentation or salvage of materials, or for time for an applicant to reconsider an application that the commission might not feel is appropriate.
All right. So when I saw the Historic Commission's comment, I asked Greg if he could provide some additional detail. Thank you for sending me the minutes. My read on the minutes, and after hearing the comments this evening, is that the applicant is not going to change their mind, and the only thing this 90 days is going to do is to punish them by making them wait further. This is sort of a judgment question, but did I misinterpret the minutes, or does it seem like there is some wiggle room in the applicant's stance?
Well, you'd have to ask the applicant, but my feeling is that they are set on this design as proposed.
All right, thank you. I think we're on the same page. So I just say all of that to say I don't think we should support this. I respect the Historic Commission and what they're trying to do, but I think this is the only thing this does is punish the applicant. And as already mentioned, they've already been delayed 2 months just going through this process. They are preserving a Class 2 historic structure. They're making it reusable for their purposes, and in my opinion, improving it. So I think we should vote against this delay. Thank you, Commissioner White.
Thank you, Commissioner Courtney. Any other commissioners? President Simon?
Thanks, Commissioner Whalen. So I need to echo some of what Commissioner Courtney said, and I agree with his conclusion. But before I do, I was surprised to hear that the construction was delayed from May, because I drive by the building and it's under construction, and so I don't know. Is it just that this portion has not been permitted?
My understanding is that the work is somewhat piecemeal. They've been working on the Monument Avenue facing modifications for a while. I think this need may have arisen later, may have been designed at a later time, and so therefore they applied for a separate building permit for this work.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a terrific international style building. I think that the Historic Commission shares my view on that. Having said that, it wasn't like people were like pounding down the doors to be able to acquire this building and adaptively reuse it, right? And what we have here is a use that's a reuse, not really in my mind quite an adaptive reuse because it's not quite preserving the historical characteristics that we would ordinarily do, but it's a really impressive reuse, right? So it is a significant investment in the City Avenue district. And, you know, we will see when it's done, but it's going to have a pretty imposing, activated front onto City Avenue. So as a different piece of architecture, right? It's a good thing. As a historic preservation or adaptive reuse, it's failing at that, right? And that's what the HC is weighing in on. And so we talk a lot about Class 2 here, and so let me just, if you indulge me for a second, let me be the devil's advocate for Class 2 for a second, right? We in items A through F just approved 3 Class 2 applications that the HC supported. Right? What were they? They were owners who owned a historic property that's Class 2, that when they bought that property, they decided we're going to engage with the township, we're going to engage with the Historic Commission, and we are going to lean into the historic nature of our property. And I think the ideal thing that Class 2 does for us is it matches owners who are interested in our historic properties with the historic properties and gets them in front of the Historic Commission to get a lot of guidance on how to do that, right? And how to be good stewards of that. Like, not every owner of Class 2 properties that we have seen feels that way, right? And so here we have an owner that has a Class 2 property that is going a different direction with it. And I share Commissioner Courtney's view that the 90 days is not really relevant here. It's not going to change the decisions here. All it's going to do is slow it down. Really what the 90 days are for is to enhance the conversation between the Historic Commission and the property owner. It doesn't change people's minds. I think we have seen that it doesn't change people's minds. So I say this with great gratitude for the work that the Historical Commission does in really doing a terrific job with the 90% of Class 2 properties that really are interested in engaging, and I mourn the properties that I think could be adaptively reused if owners wanted to, but they don't. And if we had wanted the ability to force it, we would have had to make it Class 1, and the previous board chose not to do that, right? And so that's where we are. So I'm excited about the investment. I'm sad for the international style, and I share Commissioner Courtney's view on not supporting the 90-day delay. Thank you, Commissioner Whalen.
Commissioner Sinai, could I add 2 brief comments?
Yeah, absolutely. Correct. Please.
Well, first of all, regarding the other Class 2 properties that were on this month's agenda, the majority of those applications ended up in a different place, an improved place as a result of that Historical Commission review. Many also will continue to involve the involvement of a subcommittee of the Historical Commission to make sure further details are refined. So all of those projects are ending up in a better place, despite the fact that they are Class 2. My second comment has to do with the original submission of this application for a building permit, which was, I believe, in April or May. We received that application in our department. We identified the fact that it involved this historically designated structure, that it needed to go through the Historical Commission process, and we informed the owners of the property immediately at that time that the process had to be followed. Had that application come to the Historical Commission before a building permit was submitted to our department, this whole process could have been a month or 2 shorter than it ended up being.
Okay, thank you for that, Greg. And to your first point, that was exactly the point I was trying to make. And so if I sounded like I was making any different point, then I was not coming across correctly. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Whalen.
Thank you. Commissioner Gladwyne.
Thank you, Commissioner Whalen. While I have the utmost respect for my colleague, President Sinai, there's something he said that I take real exception with. He said that we've seen that the 90-day delay, what did he say? We have seen it doesn't change people's minds. I don't think we have seen that, because every time somebody's come for a 90-day delay, we've said it's not going to change their mind, let's not do it. I can't remember one time since I've been on this board that we've actually gone forward with a 90-day delay, because we've always said they're not going to change their mind, they have their mind made up, it's just going to be punitive. I agree wholeheartedly with Commissioner Courtney that this shouldn't be punitive. That's not the point of a 90-day delay. But the 90-day delay may change people's mind. As they're sitting there and having to wait through this, we don't know what conversations are going to be had. I applaud the applicant for reusing this building and maintaining this building and allowing this historic building to be reused. But as Greg told us earlier, there are other options for allowing the light to come in, allowing this building to be reused, that maybe are better options. And maybe with a 90-day delay, maybe with more time, maybe with, as we're sitting there waiting for that time to go up, additional conversations come in and additional ways to have less of an impact on this building come up. And I think it's worth a 90-day delay. I don't think a 90-day delay in this case, it doesn't stop, this work, and if they decide ultimately not to do it, it's 3 months behind schedule, and otherwise they continue on as they otherwise would. As everyone on this board has heard me say multiple times, I have real concerns with our Class 2, our structure for historic Class 2 resources, because we are very limited in what we can do to protect them, and we never even take those few options that we do have. And every time we say, well, it's not going to make a difference, so let's not even do it. I think it's worth trying to see if we can actually do this and have, maybe a delay can make a difference here. It's great, again, that we're maintaining this building, but if we can maintain this building and maintain the historic structure of the building, that's even better. And I think 90 days is worth trying to make that happen. So I certainly support this and hope that the board's with me on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Kramer.
This building was built for a TV studio where you don't want windows. And it was constructed that way because you don't want windows. If it's being reused to have offices, people like to have windows in their offices instead of looking at a solid wall in their office. And I understand completely why, if we're going to be reusing this building and preserving most of its historic character, why somebody might want to have windows in it. I don't see any point in delaying this, because I can't imagine why somebody would want to give up the windows for their offices. I once had an office where I did have a window, but I looked out over the bricked over windows of the CIA, and that wasn't all that wonderful. So I'm not going to support a delay in this case.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Any other commissioners? Seeing none. Not seeing Anthony raise his hand. All right. Finishing up here, I am certainly in line with the argument I think everyone has heard me rail on about. Usually Andy and I are hand in hand on this. I think our Class 2 system is broken. I don't think it does at all what we wish it did or what we would legislatively like to do with it, and I think we need to address that. And I know that that's one of the priorities for this board going forward for this year. So I'm happy to do that and kind of set that issue aside. I think in a lot of instances, we could use a 90-day delay to the benefit of the project and the township equally. Unfortunately here, this is not a compromisable situation in my understanding of going back and forth with this and talking to staff. This is a situation of there is a big solid wall right now, and our historical commission says it has to stay a big solid wall, and the applicant understandably wants to put window penetrations into it. One thing I would like to know, and I certainly respect the historical commission and their position here and the significant work and effort that they put into and expend on every single matter. Unfortunately here I just don't see any ability to compromise. It's either the light switch is on or the light switch is off. So Greg, I have a question for you. Has there been any discussion before the historical commission of if windows were to be accepted, right? Right, their position is no windows, period. But if we said window penetrations were acceptable, is there a discussion, or is what we're, well, it's not up there anymore, is what we were seeing window penetrations commensurate with that style and period of architecture? Or are we talking about something completely separate?
Well, as I mentioned, the horizontal versus vertical orientation of the windows could make a difference potentially. That's not something that was before them, but that horizontality of the building was something that was pointed out during the commission's discussion. If the applicant had proposed some kind of horizontal window treatment instead of the orientation that they did, the discussion could potentially have gone in a different direction, but again, that wasn't before them, so it's hard to say exactly.
Okay. In that instance, I'm going to take some liberty as the chair here and ask if the applicant can come back up and just explain to me, simply because I'm in a position of severe ignorance, these window openings that you, and is there any chance we can put the picture back up? The window openings that have been shown to us, and they're on the last page of the packet for anyone looking at the packet, how you arrived at those, and can you explain to me how they, in your opinion, do or do not relate to the architectural period and style of the building?
Sure. So the intent was to try to keep the massing of the brick intact and the original components of the brick as best as we could in any penetrations. Working with our structural engineer, he gave us some limitations on how much or how wide the openings could be and how much brick we needed on either side of the windows in order to basically maintain all the brick conditions throughout the entire height of the building. The building itself was built in a way where the overall structure of the brick itself is integral to the overall wall construction. So we had to limit the opening sizes horizontally by 8 feet or less in order to kind of maintain that structural integrity and keep the brick wall intact throughout. If not, we would have had to then restructure the entire brick facade with any horizontal banding that would then have required us to potentially remove all that brick and then have to reinstall or find another way to keep that massing in place. So that was kind of the biggest driver for why we went vertical and why we limited the size of the opening. The number of window conditions we had was based more on the structural integrity of the walls itself and kind of how the original construction was to try to limit that impact. Beyond that, I think the overall intent was to basically provide as much natural light as we could within those massing areas without necessarily changing the nature of the brick and the overall massing of it. So that's kind of what was driving us initially. And so anything from a horizontal perspective, especially the international style of ribbon window bands, would have greatly challenged us to be able to keep a lot of the brick above those windows and the structure of that intact and allow that to remain as we would cut those openings within that. So there was a lot of concern with being able to basically structurally support all of that and maintain those original pieces of brick.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. And I do understand that is Christian Bush on Zoom?
I'll promote him.
I'd like to give him at least the opportunity, since I did drag this out, give Mr. Bush the opportunity to respond. Are we going to see him or no?
Yes, I will get rid of that screen. Mr. Bush, if you could turn your camera on. There we go.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the President for providing the opportunity to comment. Wanted to make two comments, one specific and one general. Specifically to address the statement about the architecture made earlier. We did go back and forth with the applicant in terms of trying to find a solution that was amenable in terms of the historic character and importance of the building, and we came up empty on that. And there was a statement made moments ago about the blank wall, and this is kind of an outmoded building and it needs to be modified, and people do like windows in their offices, and certainly I have one in mine, and most of you have one in yours, I'm sure. And so we certainly understand that. But it's how those windows are put in, or if they're put in. And most of the time, when a rehabilitation of an historic building is being planned, all aspects of that building are taken into consideration in the fore end, not in the rear end. And you plan around these things. As many of you know or will notice, most office buildings, or many, have a blank facade. There's a reason for that. There's stairwells, elevators, other services, electrical rooms, mechanical rooms, mop sinks, bathrooms, the list goes on. And those are always the things that are usually ganged and placed against blank walls like that. So again, the HC was frustrated by the fact that that wasn't considered by the applicant, because it was certainly something that was discussed the first time they were before us, in terms of the importance of preserving that facade, that main facade, the primary facade along City Avenue. So that blank facade, although it's just brick, is important to the character of this building, and that was discussed from the get-go. So difficult and frustrating for the HC to see that come back after the fact, at the end, long after other things were approved, is kind of an afterthought. So that was the specific one. The general one had to do with many of the earlier comments by commissioners, and I wanted to thank them for all of them. Differing viewpoints in terms of support or being against the Class 2, and certainly I understand that well, having been on the HC for more than 20 years. Oh boy, we've wrestled with this one. And I guess, there are an extensive and exhaustive list, both for Class 2 and Class 1 in our ordinance, that incentivizes owners for doing the right thing, for working within the palette of materials, the design, the colors, et cetera, within the historic character of that building to make it a better solution. And so, with that said, there is no way to disincentivize an owner other than the delay provided in our ordinance, or if it's a Class 1 to actually stop or completely oppose a change. So I thank Commissioner Gavin for making the comment, because I think it is something that we could use, and we do always kind of go to the conclusion of, well, it's not going to change anybody's mind. Well, when we run up against an applicant who has no interest in working with the commission or the township, and then maybe that disincentivizing is the last option we have to try to get attention to of that applicant or any other applicant. But lastly, and in closing, I would ask the board, as I think was just provided as an option a minute ago, that we need to talk about this further. The HC certainly welcomes a conversation with any or all of our Board of Commissioners to kind of wrestle with this. Certainly staff and I have talked about it over the years, and it certainly deserves more attention. It's a source of frustration both for applicants and the HC, and I think the commissioners too. So we would certainly welcome any input, a sit-down meeting, a round table conference with the Board of Commissioners, and we'd love to engage them further, all of you, on that topic. So again, thank you. I hope I haven't been too long-winded, but again, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. All right, I would, I guess since I opened the door here, allow any commissioners who may have follow-up comment to either of the speakers that we just heard. Seeing none, I will close by saying that I think I hear a valid justification, and will agree that going forward we should look more seriously at utilizing the 90-day delay. I recognize we have not to date, as Commissioner Gavin has pointed out. As much as I'm against the current status of the Class 2, historic property designation process and lineage, how we do that going forward, we should at least use what's there while it is there, and that's all we have. However, here I am going to support the penetrations without a 90-day delay, simply because I don't see a compromise position here. I think everyone understands. I'm always looking for a compromise position. and I simply don't see one where it's either no openings or openings. And this is something that the applicant is allowed to do. I assume our township staff has seen enough to understand the structural requirements that were just set forth by the applicant about why they put vertical windows instead of horizontal windows. Again, I'm not an expert, not going to play one on TV tonight. So with that, I would move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following application, despite the recommendation for non-approval by the Historical Commission. So with regard to 10 Monument Road, Bala, Cynwyd, WCAU Building, Class 2, 2024 R-16, no 90-day delay in the issuance of a building permit to install window openings on 2 sides of the bricks of the building's brick facade. Do I have a second? Vice President Kramer. And with that, I will call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see 9 in favor. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3 opposed. Any abstentions? I don't think I missed anybody. No abstentions. Are those opposed amenable to putting that on the consent calendar?
No.
With that, then,
Well, if I may, as a point of order, those who voted no, was it just to G?
To just G.
So maybe it would be
Right.
just G, which would not go on consent.
correct, we're dealing with just G right now, to be clear. Everything else was already separately approved.
Thank you.
All right.
Just make it
Commissioner
time.
Churchill? I'm not sure what to, but go for it.
Let's fix our Class 2 designations.
Good idea.
Yes, this is a project for the commissioners this year legislatively. So I will turn this over to President Sinai and say that we are concluded with the Building and Planning Committee for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Whalen. And, you know, something that you said earlier about this being a priority of the board, I know that the Building and Planning staff is already working on assembling the foundation to have that conversation about Class 2. And Chris and Greg have been doing a lot of work gathering data and information about the Class 2 resources that we have. And so I look forward to the board having that conversation in the near future. So with that, the next committee for this evening is Legal Affairs Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, President Sinai. Tonight we have one item on our agenda, which is to consider for recommendation, and I'll make the motion, for the Board of Commissioners, the authorization to settle litigation with Odyssey Radio for the proper payment of business taxes to the township for the years 2012 through 2017 in the amount of $2,017,139. Do I have a second? President Sinai, I had a funny feeling you might do that. But let me give a drop of background, and then we can turn it to the public. I can see the room is filled. And then any commissioner comments or questions, albeit I know the commissioners have been informed in that this matter has a long and tortured history. Odyssey, formerly known as Entercom Inc. and Entercom Radio, who operated out of Bala, Cynwyd, was assessed for issues regarding non-payment of business privilege taxes. We'll refer to them as Odyssey. They questioned whether they were really subject to the taxes, and if so, whether they were being calculated at the right amount. The matter went to the Court of Common Pleas in Montgomery County and was there for a considerable period of time for one reason or another. And then eventually in January of 2024, Odyssey filed for bankruptcy. That bankruptcy is being administered in Houston, Texas, wherein we then retained bankruptcy counsel in order to assist us in that process, and filed what's referred to as proof of claim to set forth what we thought was the tax liability that Odyssey would owe. After some, maybe we'll call them false starts for lack of better terminology, we eventually had a meeting which was attended by Odyssey's bankruptcy counsel, their in-house general counsel, their in-house litigation counsel, their CFO, as well as our bankruptcy counsel and our manager, President Sinai, and myself. And I think we spent like 4 hours going through items, and Odyssey presented certain arguments. Candidly, some had merit, some did not. And we came forth with what is before you today. I'm sure that we might be getting a little bit less than we prefer, and they're paying a little bit more than they would prefer. Someone might say that's the formula for a perfect settlement. In any event, then the amount is noted, $2,017,139. $2,017,139 would resolve all of our tax issues with Odyssey. And with that, if anybody has any questions or comments, be glad to field them. Seeing none, is there anyone, whoops, hold one second. President Sinai.
Sorry, if I just may add to that. Sort of two things. One is that I think we as a township are in the business of collecting taxes that are due, and that we have accomplished that here. And we simply have gotten to the tax that is due, along with the interest that is due, without having to go to court to determine the number. We just determine the number, just working with them. And so it's just a more efficient outcome for collecting the tax, and it comes before us. That's item one. Item two is that, before we have a vote on this, I have to recognize the efforts that Commissioner Bernheim put into this, which, he gave a long saga of this. I think you can, take however many years this has gone on and multiply by 3, and that's the number of billable hours of hourly time he had to spend unpaid on making this happen. But he pretty much single-handedly put this on his shoulders and carried it through the trenches to get us to this point. And certainly I've been very impressed by the work, and I'm grateful that you did it. So thank you. Well,
That's really very, very kind, but the truth of the matter is this, like many other things, is the true team effort. We've had our manager, our assistant manager, John Darden within the township, all of whom have put in, a considerable amount of work. Yourself, putting in a lot of hours, not just that meeting that I referenced, and the rest of the board, because some decisions had to be made to take some positions that others may have been a little bit apprehensive to do so, but just as you stated, we have an obligation to go forward and collect the taxes, and I think the manner in which we did that has a lot to do with board leadership, so right back at you and to everybody else. So with that, if we can then call the vote, all those in favor, raise their hands indicating aye. Any noes? I think we've gone unanimous on just about everything this evening. So that passes, and the email out to the folks down in Houston any second now will make them all very happy. Thank you very much, and that concludes the Legal Affairs Committee for this evening.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. We're now going to make it official with the special Board of Commissioners meeting. So will the July 10th, 2024 special meeting of the Board of Commissioners of Township of Lower Merion please come to order and all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Grimes and Mr. Zob have asked to be excused. Mr. Bernheim.
Present.
Mr. Churchill.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Ms. Epstein.
Present.
Mr. Gavin.
Present.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Here.
Ms. G. Kramer.
Here.
Dr. Rossman.
Here.
Mr. Whalen.
Here.
Mr. Woodring.
Here.
Mr. Sinai.
Here.
Oh, I forgot Mr. Stevenson, because I had him written down in Zoom.
I'm very forgivable, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So public comment. This is a section of our meeting where members of the public may address the board on the agenda item, which is the item on the settlement from the Legal Affairs Committee. If anyone wishes to address the board on that, please come forward. Guys, seeing none. Jody, do we have anyone in line?
There is no oral mark.
Okay, thank you. So we will go directly to this. I move that we authorize settlement of litigation with Odyssey Radio for the proper payment of business taxes to the township for the years 2012 through 2017 in the amount of $2,017,139. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. I guess all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. And with that, the special meeting of the Board of Commissioners of Lower Merion and this entire evening is hereby adjourned.